Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. I got a lot of shout-outs that I can't give tonight because I got to cover 15 pages. And I don't want to keep everybody here prohibitively overtime. All right? Thank you, everybody, for their patience last week. So let's get after it. It's on page 19 of Volume 1 of Teachings for Victory. The Gosho is still Letter from Sado. And this is part 2 of 3. Okay? So if you didn't catch last week's part 1, please go back and view that. And we continue with the Gosho. The entire Gosho is in this text, so you don't have to go back and forth with the writings for Nietzsche and Daishonin if you have this. All right? So, continuing. From the Gosho itself. Pardon me. 26 years have passed since the Battle of Hoji, and fighting has already broken out twice, on the 11th and the 17th days of the second month of this year. Neither non-Buddhists nor the enemies of Buddhism can destroy the correct teaching of the thus come one. But the Buddha's disciples definitely can. That's a very important thing to understand. Buddhism is undefeatable unless the worms from within the beast are able to, the parasites are able to destroy it. He says, let me read that again. Neither non-Buddhists nor the enemies of Buddhism can destroy the correct teaching of the thus come one, but the Buddha's disciples definitely can, by not passing it on correctly. All right? As the sutra says, only worms born of the lion's body feed on the lion. A person of great fortune will never be ruined by enemies, but may be ruined by those who are close. The current battle is what the Medicine Master Sutra means by the calamity of revolt within one's own domain. The Benevolent King's Sutra states, once the sages have departed, then the 7 disasters are certain to arise. The Golden Light Sutra, continuing on page 20, states, the 33 heavenly gods become furious because the king permits evil to run rampant and fails to subdue it. Although I, Nichiren, am not a sage, I am equal to one, for I uphold the Lotus Sutra exactly as it teaches. So if you do, you are too. Furthermore, since I have long endured the ways of the world, the prophecies I have made in this life have all come true. Therefore, you must never doubt what I have told you concerning future existences. So, what was that? What was that last statement? Therefore, you must never doubt what I have told you concerning future existences. It's a direct admonition. Do not doubt my teaching. Okay? I made my advent in order to pass this baton on to you. Your job is to take it exactly as I've given it to you and trust that what I'm telling you is the truth and propagate it. Okay? So he continues, on the 12th day of the 9th month of last year when I was arrested, I called out in a loud voice, I, Nichiren, am the pillar, sun, moon, mirror, and the eyes of the ruling clan of Kanto. If the country abandons me, the 7 disasters will occur without fail. Did not this prophecy come true just 60 days and then 150 days later? And those battles were only the first signs. What lamenting there will be when the full effect appears. Ignorant people wonder why Nichiren is persecuted by the rulers if he is truly a wise man. Yet it is just as I expected. King Ajatashatru tormented his father and mother, for which he was hailed by the 6 royal ministers. When Devadatta killed an arhat and caused the Buddha to bleed, Kokalika and others were delighted. Nichiren is the father and mother to the ruling house and is like a Buddha or an arhat to this age, the latter day. The sovereign and his subjects who rejoice at my exile are truly the most shameless and pitiable of all. Those slanderous priests who have been bewailing the exposure of their errors may be overjoyed for the moment because I'm being persecuted. But eventually they will suffer no less than myself and my followers. Their joy is like Yasuhira's, or when he killed his younger brother, and Kurohogen. The demon who will destroy the ruling clan has already entered the country. This is the meaning of the passage from the Lotus Sutra that reads, evil demons will take possession of others. So events that have not yet played themselves out are already in play because of the causes that you've made. That's what he just said. You guys going down. And that's what ultimately did happen. The persecutions Nichiren has faced are the result of karma formed in previous lifetimes. By the way, the important point of that last paragraph was ignorant people wonder why Nichiren is persecuted by rulers if he is a truly wise man. Okay, yet it is all just as I expected. Those of us that practice properly and have listened to the teachings over and over tell us we're going to be persecuted, it's going to be difficult. We may face times when people, it's very questionable, what's going on with us would seem like, well, we're getting hit with a lot of retribution. It's not really retribution. It's the opportunity for us to lead others on the correct path by buffeting that resistance that Nichiren was at the bow of the ship doing for all eternity for us to show us how to practice as bodhisattvas of the earth. Do you understand? So we don't worry about praise. We don't worry about censure. Do you understand? All right. The persecutions Nichiren has faced are the result of karma formed in previous lifetimes, because all karma is. The never disparaging chapter reads, when his offenses had been wiped out, indicating the Bodhisattva never disparaging was vilified and beaten by countless slanderers of the correct teaching because of his past karma. How much more true is this of Nichiren, who in this life was born poor and lowly to a Chandala family. In my heart, I cherish some faith in the Lotus Sutra, but my body, while outwardly human, is fundamentally that of an animal. It was conceived of the two fluids, the one white and one red, of a father and mother who subsisted on fish and fowl, in other words, things that had been killed so that they could eat them. My spirit dwells in this body as the moon is reflected in muddy water, or as gold is wrapped in a filthy bag. Since my heart believes in the Lotus Sutra, I do not fear even Brahma or Chakra, but my body is still that of an animal. With such disparity between my body and my mind, no wonder the foolish despise me. Without doubt, when compared to my body, my mind shines like the moon or like gold. Who knows what slander I may have committed in the past? I may possess the soul of the monk's superior intent or the spirit of Mahadeva. Perhaps I am descended from those who contemptuously persecuted Bodhisattva never disparaging, or am among those who forgot the seeds of enlightenment sown in their lives. I may even be related to the 5,000 arrogant people, or belong to the third group who failed to take faith in the Lotus Sutra in the days of the Buddha, great universal wisdom excellence. It is impossible to fathom one's karma. So what did that tell you? He's basically saying everything that occurs in your life is the result of the karma that you've created. But again, I remind you, Gon Kin O Go, as I mentioned, deliberately creating the appropriate karma is what allows us to manifest in an environment that we might not otherwise, where we're most needed and where we have the mercy and the compassion to say, stick me there. Now you got to then make the causes to get stuck there. This is not magic. There's not a God that's going to go transpose you to different environments and different associations. You're going to do that through the actuality of your own actions. That's going to create the scenario. Why was I born where I was born? Because that's where I needed to be born for the life that I've had to leave to be doing what I'm doing right now. Okay? That's the way it is for all of us. So what he's basically saying here with this, it is impossible to fathom one's karma. You could go there this whole list of, I must have been this, I must have been that, I must have been this, I must have been that. It doesn't matter. Who gives a shit? That's what he's saying. It's impossible to fathom. You're playing mental games with yourself if you're trying to figure out what your past lives were. It's not what your past lives were that matters. It's what your present life is that matters. Because that's the only thing that exists. It's the only thing that's real. He goes on. Iron. He goes, so this shit that we go through, what good is it if it's not there to punish us? Iron, when heated in the flames and pounded, becomes a fine sword. That's what it's good for. Worthies and sages are tested by abuse. If you can't overcome it, you're not a worthy or a sage. My present exile is not because of any secular crime. karmically. It is solely so that I may expiate in this lifetime my grave offenses and be freed in the next 3 from evil past. It's to attain Buddhahood in my present form, to show you, to teach you, to lead you. The Parinirvana Sutra states that those who enter the monastic order don clerical garments and make a show of studying my teachings. Those who enter the monastic order don garments. Okay, this is from the Parinirvana, the whole quote. The Parinirvana Sutra states, those who enter the monastic order don clerical garments and make a show of studying my teachings will exist in ages to come. Being lazy and remiss, they will slander the correct and equal sutras. You should be aware that all these people are followers of the non-Buddhist doctrines of today. So that was Shakyamuni making that quote. He's saying, be aware, there are going to be people that come and act like they're all that in a bag of chips and religious disciples of my own. They're going to don all the kinds of clothes and start behaving in a manner that would make you think they're really my disciples, but in reality they are not. They are not even remotely my disciples. Because my disciples are never lazy and remiss. Okay? And my disciples never slander the correct and equal sutras. Do you understand? Okay. He says, those who read this passage that Daishonin continues should reflect deeply on their own practice. The Buddha is saying that those of our contemporary priests who wear clerical garments but are idle and neglect were disciples of the 6 non-Buddhist teachers in his day. The followers of Honen, who call themselves the Nimbutsu school, not only turn people away from the Lotus Sutra, telling them to discard clothes, ignore, and abandon it, but they also advocate chanting only the name of Amida Buddha, a Buddha described in the provisional teachings. The followers of Dainichi, known as the Zen school, claim that the Buddha's true teachings have been transmitted apart from the sutras. They ridicule the Lotus Sutra as nothing more than a finger pointing at the moon or a meaningless string of words. That's great slander. Those priests must both have been the followers of the 6 non-Buddhist teachers who only now have entered the stream of Buddhism. According to the Nirvana Sutra, the Buddha emitted a radiant light that illuminated the 136 hells underground and revealed not a single offender remained there. This was because they had all achieved Buddhahood through the lifespan chapter of the Lotus Sutra, which had been preached before the Nirvana Sutra. What a pity, however, that the Ichikantikas, or persons of incorrigible disbelief, who had slandered the correct teaching, were found to have been detained there by the wardens of hell. They proliferated until they became the people of Japan today. Top of page 23. Since Nichiren himself committed slander in the past, he became a Nimbutsu priest in this lifetime, and for several years he also laughed at those who practiced the Lotus Sutra, saying that not a single person had ever attained Buddhahood through that sutra, or that not even 1 person in 1,000 can be saved by it. So the Daishonin, right? Where did he start practicing? What was his religious background? What was his religious upbringing? Don't forget. He went to Seichoji. Yeah. Okay, what was Seichoji? It was a Tendai school. But what had happened in the years from Dengyo to them? They'd been taken over by the Nimbutsu. Yeah. That's what he was remonstrating with his mentor later in life about. Dude, how could you still be doing Nimbutsu shit? All right? So he says, awakening. Now, and what brought him out of that understanding? His own contemplative process to say, this doesn't make sense. And his continuing education of himself through the other sutras to realize what he ultimately had come to earth, why he had made his advent. He says, awakening, continuing in that paragraph on page 23, first one, awakening from my intoxicated state of slander, I felt like a drunken son who, on becoming sober, laments at having delighted in striking his parents. And you feel bad about it, but you can't change it. The cause has been made. So the karma for that is going to be there, no matter what. He regrets it bitterly, but to no avail. His offense is extremely difficult to erase, but even more so are the slanders of the correct teaching that stain the depths of one's heart. A sutra states that both the crow's blackness and the heron's whiteness are actually the deep stains of their past karma. The non-Buddhists failed to recognize this and claimed it was the work of nature. Today, when I expose people's slanders in an effort to save them, they deny it with every excuse possible and argue back with Honen's words, but without barring the gates to the Lotus Sutra. Today, when I expose people's slanders in an effort to save them, they deny it with every excuse possible and argue back with Honen's words about barring the gates to the Lotus Sutra. From Nimbutsu believers, this is hardly surprising, but even priests of the Tendai and True Word schools actively support them. Okay? Do you understand? Okay. Nimbutsu is taken over because it's easy. It's not as hard as Tendai or True Word. It's an easy thing. I just got to go, Amida, right? On the 16th and 17th days of the first month of this year, hundreds of priests and lay believers from the Nimbutsu and other schools here in the province of Sado came to debate me. That was the Tsukahara debate where he kicked everybody's ass. A leader of the Nimbutsu school, Ishobo, said, "The Honorable Honen did not instruct us to abandon the Lotus Sutra. He simply wrote that all people should chant the Nimbutsu and that its great blessings assure their rebirth in the Pure Land. Even the priests on Mount Hei and Onjoji Temple, who have been exiled to this island, praise him, saying how excellent his teaching is. How dare you try to refute it? The local priests are even more ignorant than the Nimbutsu priests in Kamakura. They are absolutely pitiful." Okay, the lecture starts then on page 24. From President Ikeda. Asks the question, for what purpose were we born? We were born to become happy and to help others do the same. Crucial to this goal is winning over our weaknesses. We practice Nichiren Buddhism so that we can triumph over ignorance, which is a lack of understanding the truth. It's not stupidity. Ignorance means you don't know what you think you know. There's something more for you to know. We triumph over ignorance, over our karma, the causes that we've made and the results we're faced with, over obstacles and devilish functions, things that arise because we're pursuing the correct teaching, and over the three powerful enemies that are going to be at the end of the line trying to knock us off the horse before we can get to the finish line. Buddhism teaches that we each inherently possess the wisdom and power to win in all areas of our lives. Buddhism teaches that we are Buddhists and we can overcome anything. It is a philosophy for victory. We must engage in Buddhist study for winning, to make this hope-filled philosophy the source of successive victories in our lives. So what did that just mean? We must engage in Buddhist study for winning to make this hope-filled philosophy the source of successive victories in our lives. Come on, guys. Huh? No, we must actually continue to study and continue to advance and continue the depth of our perception so that we can become teachers. All right? We must engage in Buddhist study for winning. What's winning? Overcoming a problem? No, it's the attainment of Buddhahood in your present form. That's winning. So we must engage in Buddhist study for winning because it's only through that process of seeking Buddhahood that we're able to actually express our true identity. Don't forget that. Anything less than that, and you didn't make it in this lifetime. The goal is Buddhahood. Absolute Buddhahood. All right? We must engage in Buddhist study for winning to make this hope-filled philosophy. Why do we want to become Buddhas in our present form? Why must we become Buddhas in our present form? To be cool? To get better gigs? To have better-looking spouses or girlfriends or boyfriends? To live a longer life? Chronologically? Why must we? We must engage in Buddhist study for winning to make this hope-filled philosophy the source of successive victories in our lives. to fulfill our vow as bodhisattvas of the earth, living the teaching that we're propagating and showing the efficacy of it and actualize its promise of Buddhahood in our present form. If none of us do that, how can we keep telling everybody that's what they can do? Okay, so so if we're bodhisattvas of the earth, according to philosophy, why are we here? For no other reason than to do that in a myriad, 1,000, 1 billion different varieties of ways, because we're all different in the way we manifest this truth for the sake of others. That's why nobody's left out. Even the evil people have somebody to emulate. You understand? He says, I recall, again, this is about Kosen Rupa, that last sentence. We must engage in Buddhist study for winning to make this hope-filled philosophy the source of successive victories in our lives. If we do that, Kosen Rupa will occur without fail. It's impossible for it not to. I recall my mentor, second Soka Gakkai President Josei Toda, encouraging, you'll love this. If you guys didn't read this in advance, you're going to love this paragraph. I recall my mentor, second Soka Gakkai President Josei Toda, encouraging a young woman whose father had died when she was very young. Then she lost her mother, who had been her sole support. While struggling to make ends meet, she battled ill health. So she's faced all kinds of really tough stuff, right? These are all, oh, you poor thing. When she came to President Toda for guidance, he gazed at her kindly and said with strict compassion, I wonder how seriously you're really grappling with your problems. Whoa. Does that sound cold? No. He's calling her out because he knows the only way for her to win is to realize that she can, and she's not behaving in a way that reflects the fact that she has faith in her victory. Do you understand? He's saying, practicing Buddhism, because what he's saying, you got all this bad stuff, what are you doing about it besides, like, it's so morose and sad? And everybody feels sorry for you, but that means you must overcome it, because you can't leave that legacy in the past. You embrace the Gohonzon. You must be victorious. Not for yourself, not for the sake of them, for the sake of the law. That's why we must always win. We can never disgrace the original teacher's teaching. Practicing Buddhism is all about grappling with problems. That's all it's about. That's why they occur if you don't have any. Because you don't advance without going through that exercise. That's what hones your mind to perceive the truth of what's really being said instead of what's said on the surface. Okay? When you live that life, you're living the life of a Buddha. Then you can perceive the words that are spoken to you to help you prepare yourself for that. Practicing Buddhism is all about grappling with problems. Struggling with problems and solving them is what faith is all about. So, but what's solving them? Coming up with a great plan, hiring a super lawyer, whatever? No. Through faith, through the daimoku to the Gohonzon, you're able to stand up and talk about the power of your experience. You're able to show people the proof of actual fact. That's solving them, is what faith is all about. Overcoming obstacles, defeating devilish functions, kicking devil ass is what we do. These words get right at the heart of Nichiren Buddhism. Whoa. In a similar vein, he once said to me, life means suffering. Only when you suffer can you understand faith and become a great individual. That was just before I plunged into the historic Osaka campaign of 1956. Let me also then qualify that. What does that also say to you? If you're not willing to experience the suffering that the teaching says is necessary for you to attain Buddhahood, then you're really not practicing with the goal of attaining Buddhahood. Okay? That's what that says. And if you don't approach it from that perspective, then you'll have advanced, but you won't get there as far as you could have gone. He says that was okay. In a similar vein, he once said to me, life means suffering. Only when you suffer can you understand faith and become a great individual. That was just before I plunged into the historic Osaka campaign of 1956. As practitioners of Nichiren Buddhism, and I have the word practitioners circled, because that's the significant word in this sentence. Because it's not about just believing. It's about practicing. Practicing means you're not only trying to resolve the issues that you're facing in your daily life for the sake of your own happiness, but you're doing it with a conviction that somehow by you doing so, you're going to help lead others. If you don't have that element of jigyo keta in your outlook, if it's only about you, you really are not at the fifth stage yet. All right? You're not yet. You still got a ways to go until that kicks in overpoweringly. As practitioners of Nichiren Buddhism, when we have problems, worries or suffering, we see them as opportunities to challenge karma arising from the four universal sufferings of birth, old age, sickness, and death. If we merely let ourselves be overwhelmed or just weep and lament over our situation, we cannot break through our karma, which exists precisely so that we can overcome it. We're bodhisattvas of the earth. We asked for the karma that we deliberately created this. We're not trying to escape it. It's there for us to kill, to kick. From the standpoint of Buddhism, karma is an expedient means for us to prove the greatness of the mystic law. That's what we volunteered to do. Okay? And then we even go so far as to say, let me live this way for the first part of my life, so create karma that never goes away, so that this is always perpetuated. You know, everything I did before my mind got straight, I'll be able to have a bounce back on later, and it'll lead me to the same place it did in this lifetime. That's not a bad deal. That's who I am. You determine what that circumstance is. The young woman who received encouragement from President Toda lifted herself out of her sorrow and self-pity. She realized that we only lose our way when we forget our commitment to the mission of Kosen Rufu. Eventually, going on to become a young women's division leader and then a women's division leader, she strove as a disciple with a deep sense of gratitude until the very last moment of her life. Her noble victory continues to inspire many to this day. During his harsh exile on Sado Island, Nichiren taught his disciples the essence of faith for realizing absolute victory. At the outset of Letter from Sado, therefore, with the wish that his disciples might triumph over all obstacles, he stresses the importance of practicing faith with a selfless spirit, the spirit of a bodhisattva of the earth. You're here revealing the truth of the law. That's your gig. And the heart of a Lion King, because you're on the process of going from bodhisattva to Buddhahood in this lifetime when you're on that path. He communicates the boundless joy of dedicating oneself to the law. In the section we are studying this time, Nichiren describes the lion-hearted actions he took to defeat evil rulers and erroneous priests. At the same time, he uses himself as an example to drive home to his disciples the key to faith for changing one's karma. Top of page 25. The main theme of this section is that we should follow in the unerring footsteps of the Daishonin. What's Daisaku Ikeda say? He says, let's follow, let's us. He's included in that. The main theme of this section is that we, including himself, should follow in the unerring footsteps of the Daishonin, and by practicing with the same dignified and undaunted spirit as he, being of the same mind as Nichiren, win an unsurpassed victory for Buddhism and for our own lives. Okay, so that's the whole point. When we win that victory for Buddhism, we automatically win it for our own lives. But when we win the victory for our life, and that's the function and the purpose of why we did it, it's not always shared for Buddhism. So you should live your life for the sake of Kosen Rufu. You should view yourself as a bodhisattva of the earth. You should view your problems and obstacles as opportunities for you to validate the teaching of the original teacher as his original disciple. That changes the entire outlook of what you're dealing with in your daily life. That changes the identity by which you're existing in this world. Frankly speaking, you're now, man, that's okay, good. You've crossed the Rubicon. Continuing, page 25, the fulfillment of the prophecies on establishing the correct teaching. The Risho and Kokuran. 26 years have passed since the Battle of Hoji, and fighting has already broken out twice, on the 11th and the 17th days of the second month of this year. Neither non-Buddhists nor the enemies of Buddhism can destroy the correct teachings of the Thus Come One, but the Buddha's disciples definitely can. As the sutra says, only worms born of the lion's body feed on the lion. A person of great fortune will never be ruined by enemies, but may be ruined by those who are close. The current battle is what the Medicine Master Sutra means by the calamity of revolt within one's own domain. The Benevolent King Sutra states, once the sages have departed, then the 7 disasters are certain to arise. The Golden Light Sutra states the 33 heavenly gods become furious because the king permits evil to run rampant and fails to subdue it. Top of the second column, page 25. The Battle of Hoji refers to a conflict in 1247, the first year of the Hoji era, in which the regent Hojo Tokiyori destroyed the Miura clan, whose members commanded broad influence within the government. The defeat of its great rival enabled the Hojo clan to establish dictatorial rule. But in the 26th year after this event, an internal power struggle erupted within the Hojo clan. This was the February disturbance of 1272, which occurred the month before letter from Sado was written. Here Nichiren Daishonin states that this latest outbreak of fighting represents the calamity of internal strife or revolt within one's own domain described in the Medicine Master Sutra, affirming that the predictions he made about this in his treatise on establishing the correct teaching for the peace of the land had in fact come to pass. I am a sage. The fundamental cause of the 3 calamities and the 7 disasters, which include internal strife, rests with a country losing sight of the correct teaching. When erroneous priests appear, and by the way, that says losing sight, which means distortion of. If it's, the correct teaching's never been there, they didn't lose sight. So people in Europe, you're cool. The fundamental cause of the 3 calamities and 7 disasters, which include internal strife, rests with the country losing sight of the correct teaching, the Lotus Sutra. When erroneous priests, which would have to be Buddhist priests, we're not talking about Catholic priests, appear and distort the teaching, Buddhism is destroyed from within. Nichiren declares that evil priests who slander the law are an influence that destroys Buddhism, likening them to worms born of the lion's body. Do you understand? That was all about Buddhists. That wasn't about other philosophies. Confused values about Buddhism, stemming from erroneous ideas and beliefs, activate and strengthen the workings of the 3 and 4 evil paths. What are those? Hell, hunger, animality, and anger, okay? In people's lives. Consequently, ruled by anger, greed, foolishness, and jealousy, people persecute and try to drive from society those of wisdom who spread the correct teachings. Those who say, you know, I think you might not have it right. Let me help you out. That is the reality of the latter day of the law. So live with it. Deal with it. And know that that's what we're fighting. When wise individuals are ousted through the collusion of evil rulers and errant priests, a brutish and animalistic spirit pervades society. As a result, internal strife occurs and people suffer. Unless we view things with the eye of the Buddha and the eye of the law, we cannot truly apprehend the deep-seated reasons for persecutions directed against the correct teaching or the fundamental cause for upheavals and disturbance in society. Practicing Buddhism means fighting to achieve victory. Therefore, we have to stand up with the heart of a lion king and win. What did that just say? If you view these issues that I'm talking about as fundamentally being the source of those issues is your advance and practice toward Buddhahood in your present form. If you don't view them that way, okay, viewing things from the standpoint of you're a bodhisattva of the earth, an original disciple of the original teacher, here to be a teacher, here to advance the pacification of the land through the propagation of the law, okay, the Risho and Kokoran. He says, that is the eye of the Buddha. That perspective is the eye of the Buddha. How do we know that? That's the perspective that the Daishonin qualifies to us. So that's what President Ikeda is saying here. He's saying, unless we view things with the eye of Nichiren and the eye of the bodhisattvas of the earth, We cannot truly understand what the hell is going on when the shit hits the fan when we don't think it ought to. We don't understand why we feel like we have obstacles that we didn't do anything to deserve. Do you understand? It's only when we view our lives as Buddhas in the making, if not already having attained, with that as the goal that we're willing to die trying to achieve, that we've already determined is the path for our life. That's when we can stand up with the heart of a lion king, because that's the only way we can. You can't do that unless you have that life state. This isn't about happy talk. This isn't about faking it. This isn't about being it. This is about living it. And if you live it, shit will happen. Trust me. And that's what he's trying, that's what this whole thing is about. Because when shit happens, most people go, shit, why did that happen? Whoa. Obviously, you never read any of the teachings because it was already told to you well in advance before you could have gotten to that stage for it to be occurring for that reason. All right? So we're trying to learn about life here so that we can teach others about life. Okay? How can you do that if you don't experience it yourself? Well, shit, I never had anything you're going through happen to me, but I think, how valid would that be? It's only when you can share the heart of this person, the suffering, that you can take that suffering away.
Right.
And it's only when you have the wisdom that took you out of that suffering can you give them input that might avail to their own. All right? This is all. Bodhisattvahood means you care more about other people than you care about yourself. That's the basis of it. Okay? So if that isn't really where everything's emanating from, a desire for all others, because you're so secure about who you are and what your gig is, you're not worried about you anymore. I'm covered. For what I do, I have no problem with the reward I'm going to get. None, no doubt. Okay? So now but I'll never get there if I forget that vow. I've got to continue to behave that way for the rest of my life. He says on page 26, a sage understands the true nature of social phenomena. Although I, Nichiren, from the Gosho, am not a sage, I am equal to one, for I uphold the Lotus Sutra exactly as it teaches. Furthermore, since I have long understood the ways of the world, the prophecies I have made in this life have all come true. Therefore, you must never doubt what I have told you concerning future existences. Bottom of page 26, first column. Whether someone is a sage cannot be judged by outward appearances or social standing. The key standard is a person's conduct and actions. One who practices the Lotus Sutra exactly as the Buddha teaches is a true sage. So if you could do that, you're a sage. It's not like something outside of your capacity to express or to have come forth from your life. It is indeed the case that all phenomena are manifestations of Buddhist law. But what's that actually talking about? Absolute, all of the bullshit is included in the good stuff. Everything and everything and everything and everything and everything. There's no separation between anything. Okay? It is indeed the case that all phenomena are manifestations of the Buddhist law. There is no element in life that's separate from this teaching. A sage who thoroughly grasps the teachings of Buddhism also possesses a deep understanding of the ways of society. Further, with the ability to keenly discern the true nature of social phenomena, a person will have a clear and accurate vision of the future. Nichiren Daishonin's resounding declaration in letter from Sado that his prophecies have been fulfilled must have been an immense source of encouragement for his followers valiantly pursuing their Buddhist practice amid harassment and persecution. In another writing, Nichiren states, it would seem that when one who is able to show clearly visible proof in the present expounds the Lotus Sutra, there will be persons who will believe. Dependent origination. Every teacher has people that he's already formed relationships with, and they manifest in the same place lifetime after lifetime. In another writing, Nichiren states, it would seem that when one who is able to show clearly visible proof in the present expounds the Lotus Sutra, there also will be persons who will believe. As these words indicate, Kosen Rufu greatly advances where there is clearly visible proof. So actual the proof of actual fact is an important thing to have happen in your life. You can't just continue to suffer without resolution. You can't have the kind of faith that says, I believe so much, I'm just going to sit in this shit because I believe. I'll give my life for Buddhism. That isn't how you give your life for Buddhism. Okay? You give your life for Buddhism by being a badass, by being armed to the teeth, and being willing to face the fiercest demon and destroy them. That's how you do that. All right? He says, where am I? Thank you. Okay, where the 5 stars are. Thank you. In this particular section of Letter from Sado, Nietzsche writes, the prophecies that I have made in this lifetime have all come true. Therefore, you must never doubt what I have told you concerning future existences. The Daishonin was truly a sage who understood the 3 existences, past, present, and future. The accuracy of his predictions must have greatly strengthened his followers' convictions and faith. SGI members have also placed utmost importance on clearly visible proof in accord with Nichiren's teachings and have shown countless examples of splendid actual proof of victory in society. That is why we have won such trust around the world. And that's what will convince the others to listen to you. It doesn't matter about this moment. This moment is the battle over win or lose. It's after you've won that battle, at a point in time, you will accumulate the fortunes for people to respect the battles that you've won and the victories that have been gained and the wisdom that has accrued as a result. You will grow in life. That's a part of the deal. It doesn't just happen because you chant. It's because you practice. It's because you attain Buddhahood in your present form as you're supposed to. Continuing on page 27, first column, back to the Gosho, remonstrating for the sake of people's happiness. On the 12th day of the 9th month of last year, when I was arrested on the occasion of the Tatsunakuchi persecution, I called out in a loud voice, I, Nichiren, am the pillar, sun, moon, mirror, and the eyes of the ruling clan of Kanto. If the country abandons me, the 7 disasters will occur without fail. Did not this prophecy come true just 60 days and then 150 days later? And those battles were only the first signs. What lamenting there will be when the full effect appears. The statement, I, Nichiren, am the pillar, sun, moon, mirror, and eyes of the ruling clan of Kanto, has profound significance. So listen to what President Keita, how he breaks this down. Ruling clan specifically indicates the Hojo clan, but it can also be taken to mean the leading military government figures and, in a still broader sense, the nation of Japan as a whole. Pillar signifies the virtue of sovereign. Sun, moon, mirror, and eyes signifies the virtue of teacher and father and teacher, and father and mother, mentioned in the subsequent section, signifies the virtue of parent. Nichiren Daishonin thus indicates that he is the Buddha of the latter day of the law who possesses the 3 virtues, sovereign, teacher, and parent, of a Buddha. So anybody not qualifying Nichiren as being the Buddha of the latter day of the law, which many schools don't, of Nichiren Buddhism. You understand that? I think they kind of missed the point. And I think that the Daishonin is pretty clear in stating it the way that he just did. It couldn't mean anything other than that. He is saying, I am what you are too. Yes. Do understand that, though. It's because he can say that about himself that you can have the conviction that it applies to yourself as well. There is no separation between you and Nichiren Daishonin. He was not a different person than you are. All right? So he says, echoing the earlier cited passage from the Benevolent King Sutra, once the sages have departed, then the 7 disasters are certain to arise. So again, my point is that, if Nichiren Daishonin had always been so modest that he never qualified his own enlightenment, how could we ever know that we have that as a real opportunity for ourselves? Okay? So believe it when you see it, even if it's you. Echoing the earlier cited passage from the Benevolent King Sutra, once the sages have departed and the 7 disasters are certain to arise, he expresses the conviction, if the country abandons me, the 7 disasters will occur without fail. He then points out that the events that had transpired so far were only the first signs and urges people to awaken to the truth of the full effect. The true retribution appeared. Internal strife or civil war had to be prevented at all costs. He therefore, with a selfless commitment, persists in his remonstrations, calling on the rulers and people of Japan to open their eyes for the sake of peace before it is too late. Continuing on the second column on page 27. Repaying the boundless debt owed to the mentor. Ignorant people wonder why Nichiren is persecuted by rulers if he is truly a wise man. Yet it is all just as I expected, he says. King Ajatasattu tormented his father and mother, for which he was hailed by the 6 royal ministers. When Devadatta killed an arhat and caused the Buddha to bleed, Kokalika and others were delighted. Next, it says at the bottom of page 27, next, Nichiren Daishonin refers to the common criticism people made that if he were truly a wise person, then why then had he been persecuted by the authorities and exiled? Which is a valid kind of like question, right? And that's why it's important for you to understand in the depth of your life the right answer to that question. Because you're going to ask yourself and other people that look at you. I know I've had plenty of people go, Tom, if you're so right, I mean, dude, you've got some issues. And I did. Okay? That was okay. That didn't have any goddamn thing to do with me being the Buddha. Not a thing. Why then, okay. Truly wise person, why then he had been persecuted by authorities in exile? This criticism is founded on 2 assumptions. That a wise person would foresee the threat of persecution and avert it. I don't want to be persecuted. I'll avoid that. That's what a wise person would do. No, a wise person that knows that's what I got to do my deal will go, good, let's go. Bring it on. I'm going to kick your ass. All right? This criticism is founded on 2 assumptions. That a wise person would foresee the threat of persecution and avert it, and that a person of genuine wisdom would surely be respected by society. Nichiren, however, dismisses such views as the thinking of ignorant people. People that are not aware of the true nature of truth. It is just as I expected, Nichiren says. So he's not shocked. He says, indicating that he had known from the outset he would be persecuted, which you will be anytime you speak the truth. Always know that, because there are going to be people that are going to have a karmic influence to try to oppose you, to see if you're real. You know, if there's no opposition to what you're doing when you say those things, you may not be saying them very clearly. Truly, have the wisdom to perceive it that way. I'm supposed to catch a little shit. I'm supposed to be ready for it. It is just as I expected, he says, indicating that he had known from the outset he would be persecuted. Because you know what's going on here? You know how Daisaku Ikeda is writing this, right? This all applies to Daisaku Ikeda's life. Do you understand? I'm not talking about me. He's talking about himself. All right? Buddhas invariably encounter great obstacles and opposition. Invariably. What's that mean? Never in any circumstances don't they. Invariably means always. All right? Regardless of the circumstance. Invariably. Buddhas invariably encounter great obstacles and opposition. This is an unchanging principle of Buddhism. When the victory of the Lotus Sutra is persecuted, when the votary of Lotus Sutra is persecuted, the life condition of the votary's followers is plainly revealed. Do they show themselves to be wise or foolish? Are they disciples who, with gratitude for their teacher, who has borne the brunt of persecution, are resolved to struggle alongside the teacher? Or do they side with those doing the persecution, aiding and abetting their evil? And I'll ask you to reflect on the history of our own group when you think about that. Why are we the ones sitting around this table right now? Let me read that again. When the votary of the Lotus Sutra is persecuted, I am a votary of the Lotus Sutra. The life condition of the votary's followers is plainly revealed. Do they show themselves to be wise or foolish? Are they disciples who, with gratitude for their teacher who has borne the brunt of the persecution, are resolved to struggle alongside the teacher? or do they side with those doing the persecution, aiding and abetting their evil? And what's evil? Anything that confuses the truth. They're both evil and good. They're the same thing. It's just delusion or correctness. Commenting on this reference to persecution by the authorities in the letter from Sado, Mr. Toda said, I have experienced persecution by the authorities once, and if I have the good fortune, I'd like to encounter such persecution again. I am fully prepared for something like that. I couldn't be the leader of our movement if I wasn't. When I was arrested and jailed on trumped-up charges at the time of the Osaka incident, Mr. Toda, though extremely ill and frail, went to the Osaka District Prosecutor's Office to lodge a protest with the chief public prosecutor, telling the prosecutor that if his aim is to crush the Soka Gakkai, he should arrest me, he declared. And on another occasion, he demanded to know, how long do you intend to keep my innocent disciple locked up? He was a truly wonderful mentor. It is the way of a disciple to repay the boundless debt owed to one's mentor. For 62 years, I have sincerely dedicated myself to correctly following the path of a disciple. I have not the slightest regret. Continuing, working to establish the correct teaching for the peace of the land. Nichiren is the father and mother to the ruling house and is like a Buddha or an Arhat to this age. The sovereign and his subjects who rejoice at my exile are truly the most shameless and pitiable of all. Those slanderous priests who have been bewailing the exposure of their errors may be overjoyed for the moment, but eventually they will suffer no less than myself and my followers. Their joy is like Yasuhira's when he killed his younger brother in Kurohogen. The demon who will destroy the ruling clan has already entered the country. This is the meaning of the passage from the Lotus Sutra that reads, evil demons will take possessions of others. At the top of page 29. Nichiren is father and mother to the ruling house. What a magnificent declaration. Nichiren Daishonin was not in the least afraid of the powerful. Why would President Ikeda say that to you? Is he just telling? Is the purpose of that just to let you know that Nichiren Daishonin was brave? I think we've been able to ascertain that. Why would he stick that there? What is the purpose of this book? What's it called?
Victory.
What's it called? Teachings for victory. So what I'm reading to you is a teaching for victory, right? And so what he's saying is that, where am I? Right here, right?
Nichiren Daishonin was not in the last afraid of the powerful.
Where?
There.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where? Why can't I see that?
Nichiren Daishonin here.
Oh, pardon me. Pardon me. Right. He was not the least afraid of the powerful. And the reason I made that point is you shouldn't be either. Don't ever look at somebody's position or anything else and be afraid. You should never be afraid. You're a bodhisattva of the earth. That was the point I was trying to make before I couldn't find the sentence again. Rather, he boldly proclaims himself to be the father and mother of the Hojo clan, and that he had tried to execute him and had now sentenced him to exile. This was his immense life condition of the Buddha of the latter day of the law. As to the fate of the sovereign and subjects who persecuted him and rejoiced over his misfortunes, Nichiren asserts that they are bound to experience great suffering. This principle is the same in any age. So again, when the Honzon has on the right-hand column, may those who vex and trouble the practitioners of the law have their heads split in 7 pieces, leave it at that. That's all you got to worry about. That's your guaranteed. Nobody going to screw with you and get away with it. There will be a repercussion. You don't have to worry about. You don't have to fret about it. Okay? Cause and effect is absolute. That's what that just said. That will always occur. Those people that slander you will have retribution for it. The first 3 Soka Gakkai presidents struggled on through great persecution and won. That's why you don't have to hate them. You should feel sorry for them. You should have great compassion for them because they have no idea who they're screwing with.
Yeah.
It's beyond their capacity to understand who they're screwing with. That's what the teaching. That's what I'm reading. Even Nichiren's going, poor Hojo clan. They got their head so far up the ass. They don't know what they're doing to themselves. But I do, and I'm trying to. I'm their father. I'm trying to lead them out of this shit. Do you understand?
Yes.
Okay, so he says, the first 3 Soka Gakkai presidents struggled on through great persecution and won. I hope you will never forget this solemn and noble history. So what's that say? No matter what shit hits the fan, you have to win. You must win. You must make that your demand to the Gohonzon. You must say, I came into this world for this victory. I need to be able to show it. And then do whatever is necessary. Nichiren further declares the demon who will destroy the ruling clan has already entered the country. Rejoicing at a person of justice being tormented is a hallmark of a society in which people have been possessed by evil demons. This means the land is filled with powerful devilish functions that skew people's faculties of judgment. So the people that have, ha, Daisaku Akeda, ha, you got it, you bastard. No, that's not right. Nothing is more fearful than misguided ideas and philosophies. By working to establish the correct teaching for the peace of the land, we can transform society for the better. This is the spirit of Nichiren Buddhism. So our victory is not about winning. You're losers. We're winners. No. The victory is a spirit of everybody's winning in the process of our victory. We don't want no losers. We got no mind to want losers. We already know where the losers are going to appear and why they're going to be losers, and we want to help them. Okay? We're almost there. The great struggle to transform the karma of humankind. The persecutions Nichiren has faced are the result of karma formed in previous lifetimes. The never disparaging chapter reads, when his offenses had been wiped out, indicating that Bodhisattva never disparaging was vilified and beaten by countless slanders of the correct teaching because of his past karma. How much more this is true of Nichiren, who in this life was born poor and lowly to a Chandala family. In my heart, I cherish some faith in the Lotus Sutra, but my body, while outwardly human, is fundamentally that of an animal. It was conceived of the 2 fluids, one white and one red, of a father and mother who subsisted on fish and fowl. My spirit dwells in this body as the moon is reflected in muddy water, or as gold is wrapped in a filthy bag. Since my heart believes in the Lotus Sutra, I do not fear even Brahma or Chakra, but my body is still that of an animal. With such disparity between my body and mind, no wonder the foolish despise me. Without doubt, when compared to my body, my mind shines like the moon or like gold. Who knows what slander I may have committed in the past? I may possess the soul of the monk's superior intent or the spirit of Mahadeva. Perhaps I am descended from those who contemptuously persecuted Bodhisattva never disparaging, or am among those who forgot the seeds of enlightenment sown in their lives. I may even be related to the 5,000 arrogant people or belong to the 3rd group who failed to take faith in the Lotus Sutra in the days of the great Buddha, universal wisdom excellence. It is impossible to fathom one's karma. And this will end on page 33, right? Oh, no, 35. Excuse me, it's a little farther than I thought. Do you mind if I keep reading?
Oh, okay.
Okay. Letter from Sado is about the shared struggle of mentor and disciple. It is not only a record of Nichiren's spirited efforts as a Lion King, but also calls on his disciples to follow his example. That's the whole purpose of us reading this. Earlier described how, as the votary of the Lotus Sutra, he forged ahead despite momentous obstacles, and how, because of his fearless remonstrations, the true base natures of the evil rulers and priests of erroneous teachings persecuting him was revealed. He goes on to describe his dauntless spiritual struggle toward attaining Buddhahood. He goes on to describe his dauntless struggle. Now, what's dauntless struggle? Because if he had this kind of, if this process was his process for attaining Buddhahood, it's yours as well. You know that, right? He goes on to describe his dauntless spiritual struggle toward attaining Buddhahood. What's dauntless mean? Nothing can stop it. His spiritual struggle is continuous. He doesn't let anything defeat him. It's continuously perpetual with his seeking spirit and his determination to reveal it for the sake of others. Attaining Buddhahood means transforming one's karma. By challenging persecution or other difficult obstacles, we can overcome our karma from previous existences. Now, I've got several little checks here in the next sentence. To persevere with selfless dedication to Buddhist practice is itself the path to eternal happiness. That's a very important sentence. What's it say again? To persevere with what? Selfless dedication. So now what's selfless dedication? And what are we selflessly dedicating ourselves to? Yes, this is in the sentence. To persevere with selfless dedication to Buddhist practice. So what's that actually saying? Is itself the path to eternal happiness? Because that's the path to Buddhahood, and that's when he says eternal happiness, he's always talking about Buddhahood. This is code word stuff. Okay? To persevere with selfless dedication, that's not begrudging your life. Okay? Not begrudging your life is selfless dedication. So you practice not begrudging your life. You practice as a Jianobosatsu, a bodhisattva of the earth. Someone that's going to appear as a teacher, that's going to attain Buddhahood in their present form. You're going to go through all 6 stages. That's what leads to eternal happiness. You're going to die a Buddha in this lifetime. Assuring probably that you're repeating something that already occurred, but absolutely guaranteeing that it's going to occur again and again and again forever. All right? So he says, great hardships lead directly to changing our karma to allow us to attain Buddhahood in our lives, in this present life. That is why we must always remember to have a fighting spirit, because those devilish functions are going to try and kick our ass and stop us from accomplishing that. If we don't have a fighting spirit, we'll never make it. If we don't understand why we have to win, we'll never make it. If we're only fighting for us to win, we'll never make it. Overcoming karma is in fact no simple matter, because it isn't. Hence, Nichiren teaches the importance of being steadfast in our Buddhist practice. That means doing it day after day, even when the shit isn't going bad. Doing it no matter what. Above all, he urges that we be resolved to battle our karma to the very end. So whatever you're dealt with, you dealt the cards, you shuffled the deck. It's a one-hand game. You know, you got to win. You got to win, no matter what it is. Through this statement, the persecutions Nichiren has faced are the result of karma formed in previous lifetimes. He explains that regardless of the social dynamics that may have created an oppressive environment, his being subject to persecution was actually due to offenses committed in past existences. Okay? Which is the same understanding that President Toda came to while he was in prison, and when he came out and he said, oh, no wonder the country's all destroyed. Oh, I get it. We made those causes through our slander of the correct teaching. Through his statement, the persecutions Nichiren has faced are the result of karma formed in previous lifetimes. He explains that regardless of the social dynamics, so that means regardless of this moment, this could be 2020, this could be 2040, this could be any time. This statement is true. All right? May have created dynamics that it may have. His being subject to persecution was actually due to his offenses committed in past existences, and his link to this moment, his as a teacher, his karma to it. This accords with the teaching of the Lotus Sutra that says, citing specifically the principle of karma being eradicated through hardships as expressed in the passage, when his offenses had been wiped out, which refers to the struggles of Bodhisattva never disparaging. Bodhisattva never disparaging bowed in reverence to the Buddha nature inherent in people's lives and faithfully practiced the principle expounded in the Lotus Sutra, a teaching of universal enlightenment. As a result, he was cursed and abused, as well as beaten with sticks and pelted with tiles and stones. But such persecution was in fact retribution for his own past offenses. The Lotus Sutra goes on to explain that, and by the way, that was Shakyamuni. The Lotus Sutra goes on to explain that by persisting in his practice of revering people, even amid persecution, he could expiate those offenses and ultimately attain Buddhahood. In the same way, through battling through the 3 obstacles and 4 devils and the 3 powerful enemies, we too can erase our karma accumulated from past existences and establish a state of absolute and eternal happiness. That is the benefit of attaining Buddhahood. Next, writing, Nichiren in this life was born poor and lowly to a Chandala family. He touches on his own origins. Nichiren Buddhism is an ally of the people and a genuinely humane teaching. For practitioners of this teaching, starting out poor and lowly is a source of great pride. The Soka Gakkai is forever committed to standing on the side of the people. This is a commitment that will never change. Returning to the text, that Daishonin emphasizes that his own body is fundamentally that of an animal. Nevertheless, he infers that, owing to his unwavering faith in the Lotus Sutra, his mind shines with a luminous nobility, and is filled with an inner dignity and confidence that make him unafraid of anything. And he further acknowledges that given the huge disparity between the animal tendencies of his body and the loftiness of his mind, it is perhaps only natural that he should be scorned and reviled. Moreover, deeply pondering his own life, he suggests the likelihood that he possesses within him the same kind of ignorance exhibited by those in the past who persecuted Buddhist practitioners or who themselves abandoned the path of Buddhism. Nichiren makes several profound observations in this regard. It is impossible to fathom one's karma, he says, implying that he must have committed unimaginably grave offenses in his past lifetimes. Nichiren was uncompromising with himself, as we must always be. He gazed unflinchingly at the true reality of his life, as we must as well. And through his rigorous spiritual struggle, which we must also experience, he opened the universal path by which all people, all humanity can change their karma, which we can because of his teaching. Nichiren provided the means for all human beings in the latter day of the law to block off the road to hell of incessant suffering. The countless dramas of our SGI members successfully transforming their lives offer brilliant actual proof of people freeing themselves of the chains of karma through faith in Nichiren Buddhism. Without doubt, future history will record that this great philosophy, combined with the dedicated efforts of remarkable community of ordinary people, served as a powerful positive impetus for changing the karma or destiny of humankind. Kosen Rufu is going to happen. And when it happens, people are going to look back and go, who were those badasses that made this happen? You may all be famous someday. Cultivating one's life is the supreme benefit. Iron, when heated in the flames and pounded, becomes a fine sword. Worthies and sages are tested by abuse. My present exile is not because of any secular crime. It is solely so that I may expiate in this lifetime my past grave offenses and be freed in the next from the 3 evil paths. Here Nichiren underscores the importance of practicing Buddhism to transform our karma. Developing inner strength and fortitude is the supreme benefit of practicing Nichiren Buddhism. A thoroughly forged life ensures our eternal happiness, because a thoroughly forged life means you'll attain Buddhahood in your present form. The Daishonin says that his present ordeal is not because of any secular crime, even going so far as to assert that he was exiled solely so that he could change his karma in this lifetime. We practice Buddhism to forge and transform our lives, to go from being common mortals of the 9 worlds to being Buddhas of the 10 worlds. Indeed, as the Russian author Mikhail Sholokhov states, each of us is the blacksmith of our own happiness. So President Ikeda says, this Russian guy says, each of us is the blacksmith of our own happiness. He shouts to us, my disciples, become as strong as steel, as strong as finely tempered swords. stand up as true worthies and sages. So is Daisaku Ikeda saying that you can be a worthy or a sage? Absolutely. He's saying, please become the worthies and sages that you already are. Reveal your true identity. You're bodhisattvas of the earth. There's none of you that aren't worthies and sages unless you do not reveal that because you don't have the strength to do it. Nichiren vigorously encourages embattled followers as if shaking them by the shoulders. You have to change your karma. The power to do so exists within you. Don't run away from hardships. True victory means winning over your weaknesses. Great suffering produces great character. Don't be afraid of it. It's not a reflection of you. It's a reflection of your mission. It's a reflection of your compassion. It's a reflection of your wisdom. You asked for this. Whoa. Become an enduring victor. What's an enduring victor? That's one whose victories were able to be shared by others. Okay? Such a powerful example that your life becomes something that people kind of like, I got a piece of that. That's my guy. That's my teacher. That's who you want to be. You want to be somebody that is that powerful. President Ikeda is the example for all of us to go forward to try and be. He's not something above all of us and going to go away and then we're going to figure out, a land pervaded with slander. Everything he knows you can know. The Parinirvana Sutra states, those who enter the monastic order, don clerical garments, and make a show of studying my teachings will exist in ages to come. Being lazy and remiss, they will slander the correct and equal sutras. You should be aware that all of these people are followers of the non-Buddhist doctrines of today. Those who read this passage should reflect deeply on their own practice. The Buddha is saying that those of our contemporary priests who wear clerical garments but are idle and negligent were disciples of the 6 Buddhist teachers of his day. That's Nichiren talking to his disciples in 13th century Japan. The followers of Honen, because I'm reading from the Gosho still, the followers of Honen who call themselves the Nembutsu school not only turn people away from the Lotus School Sutra, telling them to discard, close, ignore, and abandon it, but also advocate chanting only the name of the Buddha Amida, a Buddha described in the provisional teachings. The followers of Dainichi, known as the Zen school, claim that the Buddha's true teachings have been transmitted apart from the sutras. They ridicule the Lotus Sutra as nothing more than a finger pointing at the moon or a meaningless string of words. Those priests must both have been followers of the 6 non-Buddhist teachers who now only have entered the stream of Buddhism. According to the Nirvana Sutra, the Buddha emitted a radiant light that illuminated the 136 hells underground and revealed that not a single offender remained there. This was because they had all achieved This is because they had all achieved Buddhahood through the lifespan chapter of the Lotus Sutra, which preceded the Nirvana. What a pity, however, that the Ichkantikas, or persons of incorrigible disbelief who had slandered the correct teaching, were found to have been detained there by the wardens of hell. They proliferated until they became the people of Japan today. Top of page 33. Here Nichiren Daishonin shifts his focus to the karmic retribution that will await those persecuting him and his followers. In other words, the priests who expound erroneous teachings, and the people throughout the land whose minds have been poisoned by those teachings. To borrow the words of the lifespan chapter of the Thus Come One, the 16th chapter of the Lotus Sutra, the poison has penetrated deeply and their minds no longer function as before. According to the Parinirvana Sutra, corrupt priests who are lazy and remiss, who slander the correct teaching of the Lotus Sutra, are the spiritual descendants of those who upheld non-Buddhist doctrines and criticized Shakyamuni's teachings during his lifetime. Nichiren then goes on to refute the positions of various Buddhist priests of his own time who denigrate the Lotus Sutra. What they all have in common is the self-righteous attitude to groundlessly malign the supreme teaching, turning people away from it in favor of their own doctrines. The Daishonin asserts that these priests must be followers of the 6 non-Buddhist teachers of Shakyamuni's day. Discussing this passage from the Parinirvana Sutra, Mr. Toda declared, the evil priests, now don't forget, if Mr. Toda declared it, this happened in not later than 1957 or 58. The evil priests who harassed Nichiren will now likely appear in the various Buddhist schools of the present age and also within Nichiren Shoshu. Okay, so if everybody thinks that the shit hit the fan because of Daisaku Ikeda and what he did and all, no. This stuff goes all the way back to Toda and definitely to Makaguchi, who had to go to the head temple to remonstrate when they took the Shinto talisman at the head temple. Now, everything you read here, you're not supposed to do that. Okay, discussing this passage from the Parinirvana Sutra, Mr. Toda declared, the evil priests who harassed Nichiren will now likely appear in the various Buddhist schools of the present age and also within Nichiren Shoshu. In view of the disturbing actions of Nikken Abe, who excommunicated all of us, and his cohorts in recent years, showing themselves to be enemies of Kosen Rufu, Mr. Toda's words indeed proved to be prescient. In other words, he foretold the future. Nichiren then points out that the people throughout Japan who have vilified and criticized him are no different from the Ichikantikas or people of incorrigible disbelief who could not attain enlightenment even after having heard Shakyamuni preach the lifespan chapter of the Lotus Sutra. In this section, the Daishonin clarifies the true nature of the enemies of the Lotus Sutra whom he battled. 6 non-Buddhist teachers and Ichikantikas epitomize the negative tendency to disbelieve and slander the correct teaching. What lies at the root of this tendency? It is the deluded state of mind unable to comprehend the Lotus Sutra's spirit of respect and reverence for all. Because really, it's all based on animality. It's based on a hierarchical structure. I'm above you, you're below me. In modern terms, it means disregard for the sanctity of life, for human equality, and the infinite potential of each person. It's like someone trying to tell me that you didn't have the capacity to understand what I've talked to you about for all these years. Sorry, that's what he's talking about. That's what he's talking about, and what a shock. Huh? That someone like that could have been like that. So, does this only happen to stupid idiots? No. Nichiren keenly observed that the erroneous priests of his day and their followers, despite lacking true insight into their own lives, rejected the correct teaching that would enable them to develop such insight and denigrated anyone who practiced it. They will always hate you for doing what they do not. His observation could equally well describe the tendency of many people in Japan today who disdain religion and belittle philosophy. The eminent Buddhist scholar Hajime Nakamura has noted it is very difficult to say whether or not the Japanese were devoted to Buddhism from the bottom of their hearts and recognized its intrinsic value. Often they simply followed it, even travestying the teaching or character of Buddha, as in such common sayings as we finally at the end. Not knowing is a state of Buddhahood. Ignorance is bliss. Or even the face of the Buddha changes, shows anger. After the 3rd time, there are limits to one's endurance. A Buddha is represented as something extremely close and familiar to human beings. Buddhist terminology is quite commonly parodied in vernacular expressions of everyday language. Many Japanese show little interest in earnestly seeking out the principles of Buddhism, which teaches the ultimate essence of life. Rather, they have disdain for it and they ridicule it. Among the spiritual climate in Japan, which reflects a pervasive lack of firm convictions, we of the Soka Gakkai have continued our tenacious efforts to reach out to others in dialogue, working tirelessly to elevate people's state of life so they can grasp this intent and this meaning. Buddhism exists for people's happiness. Back to the Gosho, and then we're in this home stretch. We're done. Since Nichiren himself committed slander in the past, he became an Inbutsu priest in this lifetime, and for several years he also laughed at those who practiced the Lotus Sutra, saying that not a single person has ever attained Buddhahood through that sutra, or that not even one person in 1,000 could be saved by it. Awakening from my intoxicated state of slander, I felt like a drunken son who, on becoming sober, laments at having delighted in striking his parents. He regrets it bitterly, but to no avail. His offense is extremely difficult to erase. Even more so are the past slanders of the correct teaching that stain the depths of one's heart. A sutra states that both the crow's blackness and the heron's whiteness are actually the deep stains of their past karma. The non-Buddhists failed to recognize this and claimed it was the work of nature. Today, when I expose people's slanders in an effort to save them, they deny it with every excuse possible and argue back with Honen's words about barring the gates to the Lotus Sutra. From Nimbutsu believers, this is hardly surprising. But even priests of the Tendai and True Word schools actively support them, because that's where the money was then. On the 16th and 17th days of the first month of the year, hundreds of priests and lay believers from the Nimbutsu and other schools here in the province of Sado came to debate with me. A leader of the Nimbutsu school, Inshibo, said, "The Honorable Honen did not instruct us to abandon the Lotus Sutra. He simply wrote that all people should chant the Nimbutsu, and that its great blessings assure their rebirth in the Pure Land. Even the priests of Mount Hei and Onjoji Temple who have been exiled to this island praise him, saying how excellent his teaching is. How dare you try to refute him? The local priests are even more ignorant than the Nimbutsu priests in Kamakura. They are absolutely pitiful." Top of page 35, and we're done. Nichiren Daishonin. Thank you for your patience, everyone. Nichiren Daishonin notes that the people of his day were confused. He didn't say they're bad, they're evil. They're confused, failing to realize the shallowness of the all-too-pervasive Nimbutsu teaching, which allowed forces hostile to the Lotus Sutra and its practitioners to fill the land. But an even greater problem than this stemmed from those who claimed to practice the Lotus Sutra, yet did nothing to oppose its enemies. Do you understand what he's saying there? He's saying it's one thing for the Nimbutsu followers of Honen, okay, to want to do Nimbutsu, but it's a really bad thing that the priests on Mount Hei and Onjoji are not refuting them, are putting up with it, are saying, hey, that Nimbutsu's not so bad, drop some coin in my bowl. Okay? That's what he's saying. But an even greater problem than this stemmed from those who claimed to practice the Lotus Sutra, yet did nothing to oppose its enemies. Because when we meet an enemy of the Lotus Sutra, what are we supposed to do? Without fail. Every time. Address it. We don't let bullshit pass, period. Whether it makes us an asshole or not. We don't care. All right? Find temples, solemn traditions, and formalities, and high social standing in society are all rendered meaningless once the spirit to vigorously defend the correct teaching is lost. So if you put up with bullshit, you've sunk your own ship. Okay? In that event, authoritarianism sets in and corruption and decline ensue, leaving only a hollow shell of the original intention of the teachings. Do you understand why you can't let it happen then? It'll hollow out. It won't be something that can be continuously propagated. The heart and soul of the teaching will be absent. The brave and insightful instruction from the original teacher to fight every time. Do you understand what I'm saying? Is everybody really clear on that? Because you're going to run into those situations, and half the time you're not going to do shit. And when you don't, and then you wonder about, why am I facing problems? Later, I hope you can remember the causes that you actually make versus the ones that you think that you make. All right? The ones that you actually make are sometimes not quite the same as the ones that you think you make. We don't see ourselves as critically as we probably should. All right? So it says, Buddhism exists for the sake of people's happiness. Erroneous teachings and interpretations, however, can plunge people into suffering and misery. Because people can chant and they don't get benefit. And then they blame the teaching. Right. All right? To turn a blind eye can plunge people into suffering and misery. To turn a blind eye to such misleading ideas and forget the desire to guide all people to enlightenment is to become an enemy of the people, is to lack the mercy to correct them, even if it makes you not popular. This cannot be condoned. So President Kate is saying, stand up, do what's right, chant daimoku. Nichiren's practice of shakabuku, or refuting error and revealing the truth, is a struggle to restore the authentic spirit of Buddhism, reviving the true compassionate spirit of Shakyamuni Buddha and elevating the life condition of all people. As the great poet Heinrich Heine wrote, the greater the person, the better the target, for arrows of ridicule he will make. The greater the person, the better the target, for arrows of ridicule he will make. It is difficult to send arrows at those of a puny stature. So the more you stand up to be the phoenix, definitely you're a better target for arrows. But are phoenixes scared of arrows? No. But if you're a little magpie, it's real easy to avoid an arrow. Through the example of his own life, undaunted by all persecution and criticism, that Daishonin taught the ultimate way for changing our karma and attaining Buddhahood. He aspires for his disciples to stand up and realize victory based on faith, like Nichiren, and with the same mind as Nichiren. We of the SGI are carrying on this brilliant tradition of mentor and disciple. Now in the 21st century, the Soka Gakkai shines brightly as the pillar of Japan, the eyes of the world, and the great ship of humankind. As long as the mentor-disciple spirit of Nichiren Buddhism has been solidified in the present age through the selfless struggles of the first three presidents, Mr. Makaguchi, Mr. Toda, and me, is maintained, the Soka Gakkai will flourish. I would especially like the members of the Youth Division, the successors of our movement, to deeply engrave in their hearts this formula for victory in our movement for Kosen Rufu. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.